were impressed with the Tata Hexa when we drove it a couple of months ago, but since it's set for launch next week, we thought we'd pit it against its rival, the Mahindra XUV. Now you might wonder why, because these are quite different. One clearly aims to be an SUV, the other one styled more like an MPV. But in the marketplace, they will rival each other on price. So let's see how they match up. Viewed head-on, they both have strong, beefy grills, heavy chins and skid plates to stake claim to the SUV space. The Hexa has great symmetry with the bullhorn chrome garnish around the grille and the reverse adorning the air dam. The XUV, however, has lots of cuts and curves and lines across its nose. Around the side, they take on completely different characters. Whilst the XUV maintains the upright, tall stance, the Hexa looks more stretched out and MPV-like. They both have interesting details to stylize the side profile. Whilst the XUV has a kink on the window line above the rear wheel arch to shadow it, the Hexa's roofline kinks downward near the D-pillar, and a chrome plate bearing the Hexa's logo adorns the rear window. At the rear, the Hexa has a flat, clean tailgate with a large chrome strip across. The XUV has a bulging tailgate with detailed headlamps and a lot of cuts and curves again. Despite the difference in styling, it's the top-end Hexa on its 19-inch wheels that stands a little higher off the ground. Now, if it were pure styling alone without considering a segment, I would pick the Hexa. And it's the same feeling on the inside. The Hexa's interior just feels light years ahead of the Mahindra XUV. Everything from, the leather across the dash or on the seats, the stitched leather, the knobs with the chrome tinges, the lot of detailing that's on the inside makes everything feel so rich, so premium, and it just makes you feel like you're in a car that's many levels above. But we must mention that since the Hexa stands high off the ground, you have to climb up into the cabin. The seats are large and comfortable, and it's a simply styled dash, neatly split between aircon vents, infotainment system, and climate control. Chrome and glossy black plastic adorn each part. The 5-inch touchscreen looks a little small in such a wide car, and there is a shortage of storage areas, especially in the front for the driver. Functionality-wise, Tata has packed the system with features including downloadable mobile apps for offline navigation, jukebox, remote control for the audio system, vehicle service and the owner's manual. As we learned, the apps are quite heavy in terms of battery usage, so perhaps Tata could have been more generous with the USB ports. There are only 2. But you do get 3 12-volt sockets, including one in the boot. There's also a 10-speaker JBL system that delivers immense power and clarity for all 3 rows of seats. There's 8-color configurable ambient lighting too, cruise control, auto headlamps and wipers, and a reverse camera with dynamic guidelines are also standard. However, a sunroof, push-button start and electric driver's seat adjust are features that are missing on the Hexa that the XUV offers additionally. While the XUV does pack in extra features, it completely lacks the premium feel that the Hexa offers. The dash is nowhere as well designed, and even the plastics land up looking much cheaper. However, the black and beige interiors are a nice combination, and the lighter interior makes the XUV feel more spacious on the whole. We also like the larger touchscreen that's there for the infotainment system, and the practicality of the cabin with its ample storage spaces. Now, when it comes to engine specs, the Mahindra's 2.2-litre M-Hawk engine with 140 HP and 330 Nm of torque looks like the underdog. It's the Hexa that has the new Varicore 2.2 with a healthy 156 HP and 400 Nm. Let's talk about the Hexa first. Well, as soon as you start off in the Hexa, you realize this is not an easy car to park or U-turn in. The steering is heavy. The Hexa feels large and wieldy, and should you need to make a 3-point turn, consider your upper arm workout for the day done. The Hexa's a bit cumbersome to drive in traffic, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that the steering is heavy, and after a whole day of driving, you'll definitely feel it. The clutch has a very long travel as well. And then there's the fact that when you're at crawling speeds, the power delivery isn't too smooth. It's a bit jerky and hesitant. But once you pick up the pace, the Hexa really comes into its own, and out on the highway, it's a comfortable cruiser as well. However, if you switch the mode selector to dynamic, the Hexa's initial response does get better and the jerkiness at crawling speed disappears. In fact, the Hexa has the better in-gear figures and actually ambles around quite well. Now the engine has a nice wide torque band, power comes in nice and low. So you can be a lazy driver, you can sort of amble around at higher RPMs in lower gears, stop for a speed breaker, just put your foot down without shifting down and get a move on again quite easily. Now this is a good thing because you really don't want to use this gearbox too much. You need to have a really heavy hand to use it, especially first through second. You fight for it to get it into reverse gear, and in general it's notchy and rubbery. Now when you need to summon up power in a hurry, you will need to work that gearbox and shift down to get a move on. And when you push that engine hard, you hear it. But it's still more refined than the XUV. Overall, let's just say that the Hexa's engine doesn't like to be pushed. Drive it in a relaxed manner with light throttle inputs and it responds much better. And that leisurely experience is offered up in more ways than one. The whole experience inside the Hexa feels far more refined. You hear the engine less, you hear road noise less, you hear sounds from the outside less. In fact, the cabin is just much better insulated. Whilst the engine may not like to be pushed, the dynamics can handle a lot. Now the Hexa is a tall car, so there is a fair amount of roll when you go around corners, but you never feel unsafe. In fact, you feel surprisingly sure-footed. You can carry a fair amount of speed into the corners, and that steering that actually feels heavy at lower speeds gives you good feedback, feels very connected to the road as you pick up the pace and go around corners. The Hexa feels stable and planted at higher speeds on a highway too, and leaves you feeling surprisingly well in control behind the wheel in any condition. The only thing is on an undulating road, the steering has a lot of kickback. The good chassis and the suspension tell on the ride as well. The ride of the Hexa is a little bit on the firmer side, but still, it's definitely the better of the two at low speeds. It's quite brilliant. It goes over everything with a pliant edge. And even as you pick up the pace, it's sort of the more calmer, flatter, more composed ride. And the overall sense of refinement in the way that the cabin shuts out everything outside and you don't hear much makes the backseat experience feel just that little bit more luxurious. In fact, the Hexa's backseat does pamper you. The Hexa does have its share of features too. I particularly like little things like this sun blind. You generally see this on luxury level cars. It's such a neat idea and so practical too. Well, let's get down to the XUV. Well, getting into the XUV to drive now. And I have powered seats here, which makes it far more easy to adjust to your driving position. Oh, the steering does feel much lighter. And the XUV is the easier one in traffic, especially when you want to nip in and out of traffic gaps. And even the gearbox is not perfect, but it's definitely the lighter of the two and far easier to use. Now, let me just say that the figures on papers lie about the XUV's engine's capabilities. It is quicker to the 100 mark. The XUV's engine feels stronger, it feels punchier, it definitely feels quicker of the two. But it's not only that, it's whether you're ambling around and have part throttle inputs to get going again, or whether you demand a sudden burst of power, the XUV is always happy to serve it up. But here's the thing, the XUV is considerably lighter at 1785 kilos, whereas the Hexa is a heavy 2280 kg. And that weight makes a large difference in the entire driving experience, be it the way the engine responds or the way it drives. The XUV definitely feels more nimble on its feet. As far as ease of driving goes, it's definitely the XUV that feels better. That is until we begin to talk about its handling. This is where the XUV just doesn't match up. When you do demand a sudden burst of power, as you can see, there's a fair amount of torque steer. And the steering on the whole that feels light and easy in the city doesn't weigh up much as you pick up the pace. So it doesn't inspire much confidence at all. In fact, whether you're driving in a straight line at high speeds or even cornering, it just feels light and inconsistent. And most definitely, it's the Hexa that feels the more sure-footed of the two. But let's get to the backseat and see how that affects the ride. Getting into the XUV is a lot easier. The step-in is much lower, so you can sort of just slide into this back seat. And once you're on the inside, you realize that this back seat feels more spacious of the two. I think it's the flat floorboard that really helps. It opens out a lot of room. Even the central console doesn't really intrude into the back. So third passenger will definitely be more comfortable in the XUV. And it's the width as well. It feels the larger of the two. The sunroof adds to the airy feel, and so do the lighter beige-colored interiors. Now let's get back to how the softer suspension setup affects the ride. Now that's just a good example of showing you how much more movement there really is in this back seat. And it's not only that, a lot more of the road actually filters through to the passenger over here. Like I said, over the smaller undulations, you do get tossed around a little bit more. So the ride quality is not one of the XUV's strengths. In addition, the suspension on the XUV works noisily. So when you consider backseat comfort to include space, refinement and ride, then it's the Hexa that wins. We did also check the third row, and since I'm short, we tried it with Jay Patil, who is about 6 feet tall. Overall, it is the XUV that's easier to get into, with the ability to tumble the middle row. Once inside, there's very little to distinguish between the two. Both have almost equal amounts of space. But it is the Hexa that's more comfortable, with better cushioning on the seats. Right at the back, it's advantage to the Hexa, with more storage when all 3 rows are up in the boot. Both cars have their pluses and minuses, and it's a closely fought battle with each one upstaging the other in certain areas. Now on pure merit, it's the Mahindra XUV that really wins this battle because it has better performance, the more spacious interior, and offers you the ease of driving. But what it lacks is the finesse that the Tata Hexa gives you, those rich premium interiors that draw you in, the back seat that doesn't lose out on space as much as it gives you back in ride quality, and of course the refinement levels that make you feel that this is far more a luxurious car. What the Tata Hexa does is makes you feel like you've got your money's worth and more.